Hello, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to Connect Africa. We told you we might be here tomorrow when we finished yesterday's live streaming. We said that we might be here again tomorrow. Also, we plan to be here every Tuesday and Thursday, but the situation might force us to be here, and that's exactly what happened. Me and Kwame are here for a quick update on what's happening in Niger, on the coup in Niger, and then all other things, what the West is doing, the evacuation of their citizens, the rush and everything. We are going to analyze it one by one. So thank you, Kwame, again, and welcome.
Oh, thank you very much, Mahlet. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, loud and clear. Very good.
Very well. Thank you very much. And greetings to everyone who's watching. As we said in the past, we are for the continent. And as Mahlet has rightly mentioned, we are going to be here more often, to bring updates on events. And this is a very, important event when you look at what is happening in Niger. It is an absolutely important event in the history, not only of the people of Niger, but all of the African continent. If you look at the reaction of the continent, if you look at the youth, the massive support which has come from the African youth across the continent, it has been recognized by all the major news networks, the media networks from the West. They have recognized that the African youth are behind, Niger and the coup that has happened, because the African youth, to some extent, have realized that we as a people, as Africans, we cannot continue to be lied to. We cannot be, confused by anyone, by these big media houses. We will research our own information. So this is what we have come to make addition to, also to bring that clarity. And it is very important that the African youth have realized the things, to this point. And it is, of course, the contribution of every one of us, all of us who have done, a good work of educating ourselves. And so we have come to continue to contribute, and make our addition on this situation. Thank you very much, Mahlet, and thank you everyone who is watching us from everywhere you are across the continent and across the world.
Thank you very much, Kwame, for that. Yeah, so we have been updating, as we have said, about Niger since last week. And what is different now between last night and now is that regarding the evacuation of the citizens by France, and now joining, even France is offering actually other European citizens who want to evacuate them. But why? I mean, this coup have happened in other African countries, and it just looks like the West is not gonna leave Niger just like that. I mean, there's really a big thing happening. We have Sudan, which is totally, you can call it a forgotten war. But in any case, why the rush about this evacuation of citizens by France and other European countries?
Thank you very much for that question, Mahlet. I think there's a recognition by France and the general West that things are not going as planned. And if you look at the reaction of the people, and of course, immediately when the coup happened, a small group of people was organized. It was very small. It was organized to show that the austerity president, had the support. But we saw after that that a big group of people who were against France and against this austerity president, they came out on the streets, and even they started trying to ban the French embassy. It is only, they were only dispersed with tear gas, but they wanted to ban the French embassy. So I think that France has realized that people are very angry with it, and this has been spoken about even on the major news networks. The youth are really very angry, not only in Niger, but we have seen this even in places like Burkina Faso. In the past, like last year when we saw certain demonstrations in Senegal, we saw the youth coming up and banning French businesses. This was happening even in Senegal. And this is what we are seeing also in Niger, that the youth are really very angry with France. And they know, because now people have information. I mean, you can only lie to people for a short time that they will not know. But regardless of the media machine which the West has, the media machine is not working, because the youth now of Africa, the youth of Africa now have these sources of information. They know where to get the right information from. So this is what France is realizing, that things are not going well for us. Things are no more the same for us. And they cannot hold these countries with force. You see, like how they did it during colonial time and slavery, that they were able to hold territories with force. But now, when you have the whole military of a country which is against you, and the people are supporting the military, you cannot use force. All these sabotage which we are hearing, the ECOWAS will send a military force, and of course the United States and France wants to support them. All this is a waste of time, because you cannot come up against a country if the military of the country has turned against you, has turned its back against you, and is being supported by the people. So this is the situation that we are seeing, that they are seeing that the situation is uncontrollable, and it is likely that their citizens' lives are in danger, because the people are really angry with them. And like we mentioned, the African youth all over the continent have stood against, France, and have stood behind, this coup, because there's a realization that we cannot be lied to all the time, that democracy means us being in the subordinate position, our resources always being shipped off to France and the United States and Europe, while you are telling us that we are a democratic country. So it becomes unrealistic. So this is what the youth are really angry about, and I think that the West, and France in particular, and the European Union, they have realized this, that the people don't want us there anymore. So we have to bring out our citizens. We have to airlift them. We have to evacuate them immediately before they are attacked.
Yeah, so they feel that the hater and that people had enough. I think good for them that finally they are realizing. And I don't know what reactionary, how reactionary they will be also for the African citizens in Europe. But it doesn't matter. It's good that they're getting it. Let's see. Now, I think sometimes it's good also to assess what the social media of European forums on Twitter, or whatever they're using.
So what
they are saying, not yes. The civil society, the one on social media, not the government.
Yes. So what you will be surprised that some of the Europeans actually they support Africans. They support Africans, that Africans should be able to fight against this imperialism and the imperialistic behavior and the hegemonic behavior of their governments. Many of them. I remember that when I checked that Uganda had signed the homosexuality the anti-homosexuality bill.
Yeah.
A lot of Americans came up to support. They came up to support Uganda. All over the videos which were published of how Museveni was, condemning the West and its behavior and forcing its, its behavior, unwanted behavior on Africa. A lot of Americans came out to support, Uganda, to support the Ugandan president, on its stand. It was supporting Uganda, with its stand. So you will see that when you check the media, you see that a lot of European citizens are supporting Africa. Of course, here and there, you see those ones who think that what France was doing was right. But majority, you will see that majority of the European citizens and American citizens are against their governments and what it is doing. Like when you go back to the 1960s, a lot of American citizens were against the United States intervention in Vietnam, were against the United States intervention in South America and Latin America, and how it was killing people in El Salvador, Chile, and all these countries. The United States was always intervening. And even today, the majority of the American people against the behavior of their elite. They want them to come back. It's just that our African governments have not found, and the Pan-Africans themselves have not found a way of capitalizing on the dissatisfaction of the American people and banding up. And I think this is something which we need to cultivate as Africans if we want to defeat these imperialistic groups that are causing wars all over and across the world. We need to work with the various groups in the United States and Europe who are Europeans, and they want a better world. There's a lot of people in Europe and the United States and these European countries who want a better world where everyone is peaceful and where there's sincere cooperation instead of the hegemonic behavior that is being exhibited by their elites.
Thank you. Thank you, Kwame. Yeah, important development about what Nigeria did. But let's go through this question, and then we come back. Aaron commented something. So now, why the EU and the US, they are quick? I mean, Secretary Blinken came and threatened that you have to restore, President what's his name? Mohamed Bazoum. He made him, as we know, we analyzed it in March. And then right after that, Africom, the biggest Africom center or base.
Drone base, yes, the drone base
is there now. So yeah, Blinken came, and Canada and several European countries have condemned it. Of course, France take the lead. Why the threat? What is so? I mean, why is they just like this? Oh, they just killing each other. Why they don't leave it like that?
Yeah, so there's something at stake. There's something really at stake here. The United States has, like you've rightly mentioned, it has its biggest drone base in this region, which it uses to do surveillance all over across, the African continent. Because Niger is somewhat in the middle of the continent. That is on the side of the United States. But there is all the other companies which I'm going to talk about, the other countries which have companies in Niger itself, which I'm going to talk about. That is why they have issued these threats. It is not that the United States cares about democracy. It is not that these Western people care about democracy. These Western elites, they do not care about democracy at all. They do not care about human rights. And we have repeatedly mentioned this. We have spoken about this repeatedly. These people went to Iraq and they killed 1 million people. These are not people who care about human rights. So these are not people who care about democracy. Mm-hmm. They have been killing innocent people all over across the world. So the reason the United States is there is its desire, because it moved in very quickly, because it has the desire of taking over majority of the French colonies, the former colonies of France, or the colonies which France has been governing for a very long time. So the United States feels that France is becoming very weak. So it should move in and take over these places. And so that is why it decided to come in with the military. Now, what is the reason? Of course, the reason is to control the resources. We understand that Niger has a lot of uranium, and it supplies 5% of that uranium. The global uranium output. Last year alone, Niger put out around 2,020, metric tons of uranium, which is valued at around $4 billion. Now, when you check, even though that figure is available at the current price of uranium, last year's production by Niger alone was supposed to provide about, it was supposed to provide for Niger those 2,020 tons. It was supposed to provide about $4 billion. But when you look at, you look for figures which show what Niger gained, how much money came to the country of Niger, you do not see it. Now, what you see is that the World Bank and IMF were able to give Niger as aid, about $150 million. So this is after their corporation is taking out $4 billion from the country. Now we are wondering, and they make a lot of noise about this. So we know this production that happened. We know how much value of the uranium that has been taken out. And we know that they have taken this uranium, this much. But when we search for how much money Niger gained, or how much of the $4 billion remained in Niger, we do not see that figure. Instead, what we see is that Niger received $150 million, million, not billion, $1 million as aid from the IMF. So which becomes ridiculous. So this is one of the reasons why the United States is in Niger. Now, on top of uranium, they discovered oil. I think I've spoken about that. They have gold. Now, who is there that is extracting these resources? When we check, we see corporations from Canada, and now Canada has military troops in Niger. We see corporations from Belgium. Belgium too has military troops in Niger. Germany has military troops in Niger, which were sent away from Mali. And France has military troops also in there. So all these countries, they have military troops in Niger. And also they have corporations which are extracting the uranium from Niger. And of course, we have seen that France takes majority of its uranium from the Sahel, from Niger and Mali. That's where they have been taking its uranium. And that's why you are seeing the hysteria. That's why you are seeing the fear. And that's why you are seeing that they are issuing a lot of threats. They are issuing a lot of threats because there is so much at stake. At this point, there's so much at stake for them. So, like we mentioned before, the United States at this point, when it is losing its grip on the control of the world, it wants to use all tactics, including threats, blackmail, lies. We saw here, the former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, what he said when he was being interviewed, that the United States and the CIA, we always lie in broad daylight. And fortunately, the African youth are watching all these things. So if a Secretary of State of the United States, a former Secretary of State of the United States, who's the Minister of Foreign Affairs when we come to Africa, of the United States, comes and says we always lie, so do you expect the African youth to listen and believe Blinken when he's coming to talk about anything, when he comes to issue something about Africa, to make a comment about Africa? He's talking about democracy. Do you expect that the African youth will believe these things? Of course not. Of course, the African youth, they will not believe this nonsense. So I think that this is what we are seeing, that they are trying everything, to remain on top of the world. But then also what is at stake in Niger is so much. Now, what is unfortunate is that the African Union is not paying, the African Union and ECOWAS, they are not paying attention to the loss of resources that is happening to Africa, because for them, the African heads of state have been benefiting from this order that is collapsing currently. And when we see the reaction of ECOWAS, that it is in line with the reaction of the French and the United States and the UN, so we can only conclude as the African youth that these people have been benefiting and they are happy with the system. And because they are benefiting, they do not care about the African youth. They do not care about their nations. They only care about their bellies and their pockets, that their pockets are being filled by Europeans. So they do not care about the African youth. And that actually puts them in a very dangerous position, because it puts them at a point whereby they will have to confront the African youth. And this becomes problematic and very unfortunate, actually, because when this system is collapsing, then they have to go with the system, because they have drawn the line and crossed and decided to be on the side of the group that is oppressing the African people, which becomes very unfortunate, in this situation. So what is at stake? Here's the domination of the world, the desire to continue to serve the colonial system that is benefiting the West. And then these resources, there's so much resources the continued exploitation. They want to continue. So they want to use all types of tactics to be able to benefit themselves continually.
Yeah, that is the level of their arrogance. Uh, Now, what is that, they want in Niger, that you have all these countries in a so-called poor country, which is a second poorest country in the world, according to, their report. Their media always is saying Niger is the poorest. Yeah. Why are they paying all of a sudden? And yet Niger is not complaining with their cutting of aid. Well, yeah, go on and please. I really, really would love to hear this one. Please go on.
Yeah, so actually, the leader of the coup, he mentioned that if they cut off aid, let them cut it off. Let them cut off aid. Actually, we hear that Niger also said that there's no more shipping of our uranium to France. They cut it off, and this is what has caused so much hysteria in the West. They cut off the uranium. So he said that if they want to cut off aid, let them cut it off aid. Let them give it to the homeless people in the United States. The United States has a lot of homeless people. So this is the the level of confidence, even which we are seeing that is coming out of, some of the Africans. I think is really laudable. But as we have mentioned, the desire to remain there, what they want from Niger, is the submission that the Africans should continually submit to the United States, should continually submit to the Europeans. This is the level of arrogance, like how you mentioned. They want Africans to continually submit. We should be able to submit to the Europeans and, continue to say that we are subordinates. We are subordinate. We are your subordinates. Do however you want. Our resources, take them. Take the uranium. It's for you. Take it. For us, we will go, hungry. We will accept the crumbs which you throw for us, and you call it aid. We will accept that you are giving us aid, even though you are stealing from us. We will accept. This is what they want to hear from the Africans, and you can use our territories, so we can continue to claim that we are a democracy. But you can occupy our territories. We can continue to say that we are a sovereign state, but you can occupy our territories. So this is what they want. They want total domination, total subjugation, and total submission by the Africans. And this is what the Africans are saying: no, we will not accept this. So if you want your aid, keep it. We'll find another way of living. And actually, it is better that we live the way we are living without their aid, because they need our resources more than we need their aid. Because we don't need their aid if we have good and fair trade deals with the other groups across the world, whether it's the Chinese, whether it's the Russians. If we have good and fair trade deals, we do not need aid from the United States or from Europe. So this is what we are seeing that they are looking for from Niger, continue that bullying behavior towards the Africans.
Yeah, and one important thing, just help me to clarify. Now that it sounds like a very cliche thing or a layman question. Okay, Niger stopped shipping its resources like gold and uranium to France. Very good. It can sell it to other countries. The West probably no, but maybe to the other bloc. And then particularly also within African countries, don't they get the same amount of profit that they get by selling it to France? Do they even get the money from France? That's another question. But why not selling it in just quickly, because I'm bringing this, it's unplanned question.
Yeah, so you would get the same price, but the thing is that the leaders right now have realized that, and that is why you are seeing that they are putting a break on it, like you've mentioned. In the past, our leaders know these facts, that you can get better prices, you can negotiate better with others. But the problem is that there's a mix they don't use one tool. The Europeans and the West has not been used one tool. They have been using a couple of tools. If you read, for example, the book called The Confessions of an Economic Hitman, which was written by an American man called John Perkins, in that book, he mentions that they use a combination of tools. Because these coups, actually, what we should understand about coups is that.
What is coups? Like the coup d'etat?
No, the coup d'etat. Yes, the coup d'etat. So what we should understand about the coup d'etat is that the coup d'etats were started by the United States as a policy of removing governments it doesn't like. Of course, it started with Iran. It started way back in Iran. They tested that technique in Iran by overthrowing the government over there. And they saw that it worked. So they decided to multiply that template. Now, what John Perkins writes in Confessions of an Economic Hitman is that the United States, using its institutions, the World Bank and IMF, it comes to the countries and forces them and gives the loans and forces them. Like what we are seeing, it is the same thing that is happening actually in Niger. They give you some small money. They know that they want resources from your country. They give you like $100 million, which is not anything. But they will make a lot of noise across the world as if they have given you a lot of money. Even if it's $600 million, they will make a lot of noise across the world that they have given you a lot of money. It is a lot of money. We have given aid. We have given this, as if it is some reasonable money, and they will come and steal. Now, what John Perkins is saying, that they will come in this way with the World Bank and they see the resources which they want. So if they are able to buy the elites in the country, then they are able to get access to these resources. Of course, they give these loans as if they are giving to the country. They want $50 million, but it is the elites who take this money. The people don't get anything on the ground. And this is exactly what we have been seeing in Africa. Now, if they find a country that does not agree to this, you find a leader that says, you will not buy us in that kind of way, you will not corrupt us, then they threaten that person. They will threaten that person to submit. If the person refuses to submit, then they will start attempting a coup. If they cannot succeed with the coup, then they will start saying that he's abusing the human rights and come to overthrow the leader and kill him. If they cannot overthrow him with the coup, then they will come and attack with force. So this is the combination of tools that is available to them. If you refuse, so even if you know that these are the options which I have, I can sell these resources at a much higher price, even the oil. We have seen this with Venezuela, the demonizing of Venezuela, putting sanctions. I've not mentioned the sanctions. You have seen the issue with Zimbabwe. So this is similar. Even with Zimbabwe, took back the land from these invaders who went there and killed the people, killed our people, killed the African people. They took back the land, they put sanctions. So these are some of the colonial tools that are being used. So it is not a single tool. Now, why are they putting sanctions on Zimbabwe? Because Zimbabwe realized that the value in our land is better, that the land is in the hands of our people so that our people can grow their food. And it's the same thing that if you realize that your uranium has much more value, I will sell it maybe to China and I will sell it to India and get much more price out of it, or I will sell it to Pakistan, which wants to use it for nuclear power production. Then they will use all these tactics to try to remove you from power or demonize you. And of course, unfortunately for us Africans, majority of the leaders like President Bazoum, who was overthrown, they have just been easy for them to push around. Those ones, for them, you don't even need to cause a coup. You know, a lot of them, you just threaten them. A lot of them, you just come and bribe them. Some of them, they don't even threaten them. They just bribe them with a few money, and they will say that they are giving us aid. If you listen to an interview, which the former president of Niger, who was overthrown, was doing with Al Jazeera, in that interview, which I was watching it yesterday, actually, he was praising the West. You know, that the West's military should be in the country. They are giving him help. They are giving the country help. You know, they are providing resources. Mali is not going to get those resources. Niger is getting those resources. So this is the type of people. So once they buy him out and they help him to come to power, then all of a sudden they claim that that is democracy because he's taking care of them. Like we said, 2022, more than $4 billion worth of uranium was shipped out of Niger, but we cannot find a figure which says that this is how much money, or maybe 50% which remained in Niger. We cannot trace that money. The only money which we can trace is crumbs. Crumbs, they are the ones which we are given to Niger by the IMF of around $150 million. $150 million out of the $4 billion. So this is what we are seeing. And they are arrogant enough. What is surprising is that they are arrogant enough even to use France 24, a media network from France, to claim that Niger is one of the most impoverished places on earth. The same people who are stealing from us. So the level of arrogance by these imperialists is unbelievable. Is unbelievable to some extent.
Yeah, indeed. Unbelievable. I'm just hearing it just came out, I think, a few hours ago, and then our viewer here, Aaron, brought it to our attention that actually today Nigeria has cut electricity for the people of Niger. I mean, I'm just speechless, you know. We can, if we have time, we will get back at it at the end of it, why Tinubu is acting the way he's acting, really. Oh my goodness. But yeah, let's go to the next question. So yeah, of course we hear the other day I have read that, Algeria and Iran are somehow preparing if ECOWAS is not if ECOWAS continues with what they are threatening, intervention or invasion of Niger, that they might supply arms to these countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger right now, who are fighting neo-colonialism. Just, can I say unilaterally, the three of them, let me put them together, and against the whole neo-colonialists, and including actually African heads of states who are serving the West. So is that true, first of all? If so, why?
Yeah, I think that it's just even a very good thing that we should be able to applaud on the side of Mali, Burkina Faso, and even Algeria, which I've heard somehow that it is come out to support. And of course, Guinea also has come out to issue a statement. It came out and they said that they will not implement the so-called sanctions by ECOWAS. So this shows you that you have now about 4 countries, about 3 countries out of ECOWAS, which is supposed to be a coalition of around 14 countries. So this shows you that ECOWAS itself is breaking up and is losing, is sort of like losing credibility in itself. So I think that it is very important. You could say that some African leaders are noticing the writing on the wall. Like if you go to Algeria, because Algeria has been fighting against France and has actually been holding a grudge against France for a very long time. You remember last year, I think it was last year or 2021, when President Macron went to Algeria, almost the people wanted to slap him, and his bodyguards had to protect him. They had to protect him and remove away from the people, because he wanted to wave to the people, but because the people, they have the history is very fresh of how France brutalized the people in Algeria. It brutalized them and killed a lot of people. They had to fight France and they were brutalizing them. So France went there, Macron went there to say that they should forget about all the history, forget about that, leave it to the historian, let us look forward. And this is the tactic actually they have been using even on Africa many times. And even the black people in the United States, this is how they treat them. When it comes to the black people, they always tell them that you should forget about the past. Let us look forward to the future. This is the tactic that the white man has been using, the ruling elite in these countries, in the Western world, has been using to in order for him to continue to perpetuate the injustice that has been imposed on the African people. So when they went to Algeria, Algeria did not buy it. They did not buy that nonsense. And the Algerian people wanted even to slap Macron when he was on the street trying to greet the people. People were very angry. So the bodyguards of Macron had to pull him out of the country. So the conversation in Algeria was not very good. And even when he went back to France, he said that Algeria is still stuck in the anger of the past. We should forget about the past and look to the future. So these are the tactics which they want to use. So Algeria, even in the past, if you look at it, you saw that we spoke about Algeria here, that it came to Uganda to try to convince Uganda that they should partner in building the oil refinery, the East African oil refinery, which is supposed to be built in Western Uganda. So Algeria, in the past, even, it has been very inclined to working with the other Africans, unlike countries like Morocco, which even jumped out of the Organization of African Unity or the African Union for some time and just came back recently. This Algeria has been very much inclined. And on top of that, also, what you can speak about Algeria is that it has the border, it is bordering Niger. This is one very important thing also. And apart from Mali and Burkina Faso, for them, this issue being purely an issue of solidarity, to be able to stand with their brother who is being attacked by the West, Algeria would not want an influx of refugees from Algeria to be running from Niger, because if you go and attack Niger, then you are going to have an influx of refugees, flowing all the way from Niger to Algeria, because they have that border. So Algeria, I believe, it doesn't want that. So it is better for Algeria, I think, at this point, to add its voice behind Mali and Burkina Faso, so that they put some fear in ECOWAS, so that it cannot attempt to do that, illusionary, tactics. It cannot be able to implement those illusionary, strategies which they are trying to, implement and say they want to attack, Niger by using military to reinstall the president. So if you stand together with Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, then you can put a lot of fear in them, because they will fear that if they attempt to go in there, then it will be a conflict that will engulf the whole region, because these three countries will be fighting against you, regardless of who you are, if you are Nigeria and Ghana and whoever else, Senegal. So I think that they will not, ECOWAS, from what I'm seeing, may not, it will fear to try to do that, what it was saying, that it is going to attack.
But it seems, how do you say, it's unexpected for Nigeria to cut power. So why I should not be convinced that ECOWAS will not do what it wants to do, or what they say it will do, as Nigeria is now on the drive seat?
Yeah, I think that they would do like cutting off power, because they do not have any other option. Because the option of military force is off the table. It is not possible for them to go in there. It would be very bloody. It would be very dangerous, because the current Niger government will mobilize the people, and they will take up arms, and they will give them arms. Maybe they will even bring Wagner, because they have a border with Mali. So Mali will enter in. They have a border with Burkina Faso. All of them will be involved now, and Wagner will be in there. So it will be very catastrophic. It will be extremely catastrophic. So I think that because that cutting of electricity, I think it is because the other option is off the table. It is not possible to implement that option of military, invasion, which they are saying that they will go and use force.
Yeah, just a second. I'm reading comments here. let me just read them out one time. So Sheikh Ara, first of all, thank you. It's a very good amount of, I mean, relatively, so that you tuned us here with us. We appreciate it. You are engaging, which also really make us more excited for us when you engage and, you know, bring your comments, questions, and suggestions. Now, Sheikh Arabi said the northern part of Nigeria is controlled by terrorists linked to Saudi Arabia, right? He's asking also. It's not clear what side Mohammed bin Salman will take. That's what he said. As you watch, all of you, please, Aaron Black, thank you very much. But you know, hit that subscribe, give it a like, and then share it, please. As the streaming is going on, please share it with all your friends that you think that if you have a Pan-African group or to people that you think it will be relevant, just drop it on your social media network. It will really help us. We cannot just keep this knowledge to us. That's why we are here every day, you know, for us to share the knowledge, the information. We can't even wait for some of the information for tomorrow. We decide just on the spot, okay, we have to do it. So if we go that much, why not you just, you know, share the link? That's all you have to do. Subscribe, give it a like, of course, if you find it relevant, then extend it, reach out to other friends, and, you know, share the information. Now, Aaron said, don't you think it's time to abolish useless regional integrations like IGAD, ECOWAS? Well, I don't think so, but Kwame might have his own view, which we can keep it for later. Sheikh Arabi said, no, you can come back to them for two of them at one time. Chad is another interrogation. Yes, I agree with you. Yeah, before I go to the next question, you can you want to address this? Or
yes, so the regional bodies themselves, when you go back to starting 1960 until the formation of the Organization of African Unity, Nkrumah was against the formation of regional organizations. And I'll give you an example of how Nkrumah fought against the formation of these so-called regional economic communities, you know, REC. They call them RECs, regional economic communities. So these groups, Nkrumah saw them as a source of balkanization of Africa. So what he meant is that Africa is going to be repartitioned again by the colonialists and dominated. So that is why Nkrumah fought against it. But then, if you go back to Nkrumah's history, when he had just come from the United Kingdom and he was coming back to the Gold Coast in 1947, Nkrumah was for the formation of regional blocks, as in West Africa. He wanted, even when he was coming back, he passed through Liberia to try to meet President Tabuman, you know, who was in Liberia during that time. So he passed through Liberia. And his purpose, his goal was to unify West Africa into a regional bloc. But immediately Ghana got independence, Nkrumah was a leader who was a visionary. And some people, they say he was a prophet because majority of the things he said were able to come to pass. They were able to come true. Now, Nkrumah immediately realized that, no, this is a mistake. The issue of regional blocks is a dangerous issue. So he changed and said that if we want Africa to be free, and actually he also had an advisor. He had an advisor who was called George Padimo, who was from the Caribbean. He was an African, you know, of African descent, who worked in Nkrumah's government, and he was his advisor when it comes to the issue of African policy. Even though he was born in the Caribbean, but he was purely African. And I think this is where Nkrumah took his slogan, where he said that I'm not African because I was born in Africa, but because Africa was born in me. So for him, he considered all people of African descent African. You can talk of Dubois, who died in Ghana. Of course, even George Padimo himself died in Ghana. So Nkrumah it's likely that he took some of these ideas from George Padmore. But Nkrumah changed position immediately and saw that it is necessary for us to unify Africa as quick as possible because the regional blocks were going to be used by the imperialists. This is what Nkrumah saw immediately. So now when we come to the 60s and up to 1963, people like Nyerere, Julius Nyerere, were arguing that we should build it slowly. And of course, the president of Liberia, that's why you hear about Monrovia, because Monrovia is the capital of Liberia. So yeah, so that is what you hear, or where you get what is called the Monrovia group, because the people who are arguing that we should go slow and we should build the regional blocks, the regional economic communities, and then later on we should unify the African continent. That was the Monrovia group. Now the Casablanca group, that is the one Nkrumah, Mali, Keita, they belonged to that one. Guinea, Sekou Touré, they belong to that group, and Abdul Gamal Nasser of Egypt, they belong to the so-called Casablanca group, or the radical group. That is the one they belong to. And they believed that Africa should unify immediately because the regional blocks are dangerous. And now what Nkrumah envisioned is the closure and blocking off of imperialist intervention. Because when you have Africa still divided in pieces, the so-called regional blocks, then you are leaving gaps, you are leaving windows for imperialists to penetrate. This is what Nkrumah saw. And of course, that has come to pass. You are seeing the behavior of ECOWAS. That's what is happening, that imperialism has been able to penetrate it and use it. Why? Because in 1963, we failed to unify the continent solidly. And we were left with an organization which acted like an NGO. And that's why you see that the African Union itself also came out to condemn the coup. Why? Because these organizations became captured. They were easier to capture by neocolonialism and imperialists. So you hear people, some of the people complaining about the AU not working, but they don't know this history. And some of them, they will complain the AU is not working, it's not doing its work, but at the same time, they are supporting the regional blocks. They are the same people who are supporting and saying regional blocks, we should go with regional blocks. But the regional blocks have been captured and they are not working. They are not functioning. So this is what Nkrumah warned about and said that we had to give power to the union. All of us had to give up power. That's why in the constitution, in 1960 constitution of Ghana, it was put that Ghana is willing to give up its sovereignty for African unity to the African Union government, which will be formed. All the other African countries did not do that. But Ghana was willing, under Kwame Nkrumah, to give up its sovereignty for the formation so that the African government can occupy it, can take over that power. And this is what even President Ruto was talking about, that African leaders should be willing to give up power and give it to the African Union so that the African Union can function. But as long as it doesn't have power, we don't finance it. And all even these regional economic communities and blocks, they all have been captured by imperialism. So they cannot function in the interest of the African people. So the people who are in them, then they have to parrot the same narrative of the imperialists and neocolonialism. And that's what we are seeing, the behavior. This is the behavior that we are seeing from ECOWAS. We are seeing the same behavior with the African Union. So I think it should not be a surprise with the regional economic communities. They are not supposed to be there because they have not produced anything good for the African people. And Nkrumah did not approve of them. And of course, when we are talking about Pan-Africanism and African unity and the unification of Africa, there's no other person we can consult apart from Kwame Nkrumah at this point, I believe.
Thank you, Kwame, for addressing that for Aaron. Now, thank you very much. Welcome, W. So yeah, it's not late. You can always watch it back, what we have said. You can watch from now on the live one, but you can also take it, or how do you say, you can catch up what we said when this streaming is over. Now, Ramanuji Parihar. I don't think this is your platform, but in any case, everyone is welcome because your comments don't seem related. This is a Pan-African platform. I will read what you said. Regional integration is not possible until you have educated people, wealth and industry and appetite to compromise. Africa has little, so not much hope other than more chaos and your arrogance. And then he said also, or she, you can't justify military coup by any logic. You had democratically elected leaders that is thrown away by military. Yes. And now military is using anti-West sentiment to remain in power. First of all, you should have listened our analysis of yesterday, the difference.
No, I will respond to him or her, and I'll try to comment to him or
just,
a little bit.
But quickly, I really don't want to give so much time for this kind of person. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, he has a right to his opinion. He's entitled. Everyone is entitled to his opinion. Yeah. So this is very important. But I think you have to come with the facts. You have to come with some, real facts to justify your position. And now, what we said in the analysis yesterday is that democracy itself has been used as a tool, and right now it is coming under a challenge. It is coming under, people are challenging it. And why are they challenging it? People are not challenging democracy and overthrowing governments because they hate democracy, but it is because democracy as a process is supposed to deliver development to the people, improve the lives, or what we call upward economic and social mobility. So if democracy, the so-called democracy, is not delivering the purpose for which it has been put there, then the people have a right to question it. And in every way, every kind of way. So you cannot justify the continued deprivation of our people with the fact that democracy is there. I mean, you cannot justify that. In the same way, you are saying that I cannot justify, or this channel, or we cannot justify our, support for the coup, by saying that we have anti-West sentiment. We cannot propagate anti-West sentiments, but also we are saying that you cannot justify democracy while you are shipping off, while you are shipping off our resources and our people are impoverished, and you say that we are a democracy. I mean, this is what we are not accepting. So if democracy has become a religion, then you have to tell us that it is a religion, because we said that the last time we remember, people have been abandoning religions. As long as they are not producing anything for them, people have been abandoning religions in big numbers right now. So as long as democracy cannot deliver the expectations of the people for which it was put there, then people have the right to challenge it. Because democracy is a process, is a means to an end. But democracy is not an end in itself. And what I mean is that people are not pursuing democracy. People are pursuing improved lives. They're pursuing upward social and economic mobility through democracy. So if democracy cannot deliver what people are pursuing, then the people have a right to question it and to challenge it and remove it, or even try other systems. And that is what you are seeing right now, that it is under challenge right now.
All right. Thank you, Kwame, for making time for that. Now, let's go back to our discussion for tonight, which is an update on of the Niger coup, and then also the evacuation of by France and then other European countries as well. Why the rush and why the West is really, the US and EU is coming like this and threatening Niger. And of course, the ECOWAS and AU was so fast also to issue that statement, and Nigeria has become something else in playing as a Trojan horse in all this mess. looking at the situation in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, the military taking over the power, it just reminds us of something historically. Now, before our last question, let me just ask you this. Are we seeing like a trend here of history repeating itself? What I mean is that in 1939 to 1945, Africans and African Americans went and fought in the European War, which is sometimes mistakenly called World War II. These soldiers came back to be those who started the agitation for independence in the colonies that time, and even in the civil rights movement in the US. Today, the United States have been training military forces in Africa, and some of them have gone to be the ones involved in the coups. What can we say about this trend? Is this history repeating itself? Are those captain or colonel or general who took power now in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have similar background?
Yeah, so so I think you have put it very well. They say history does not they say history repeats itself, and other people say it does not repeat itself, it rhymes. So actually they're just reiterating the same thing. It is not out of place, I think, to suggest that if you look at the patterns in history, like you've mentioned, the World War II, the so-called World War II, which was Pierre Lumumba calls the European Tribal War, that our ancestors went and fought in it, and the Europeans, and actually because they were fighting over the African continent through their greed, because each one of them wanted to occupy the continent. Germany was feeling that it was not given enough territory, so it started a war with the other European countries. So they took our ancestors to fight in these wars. Now, they never thought that these people who were being taken to these wars, I think they had this sort of, they always have this superiority complex, that they never think that anything good can come out of the Africans. And that is what they thought. Even when you look at the videos which were published in those years, 1940, 1945, the recordings, I watched one where the Europeans went to Ethiopia to film, and they said that the Ethiopians were not black people, they were Europeans, that these people are white. Why? It is because Ethiopia was able to defeat Italy. So because they made that video, they filmed that video after Ethiopia had defeated Italy. So they wanted to see, because when Menelik defeated Italy, immediately during that period, the Europeans started giving a certain level of respect, to Ethiopia and of course Africans. And then when again Italy was defeated the second time, then they were so fascinated. They wanted to find out, how did these guys do it that they are able to defeat an European country, in a war? So they came and started doing those videos. So of course, it was for propaganda purposes, that they are not Africans. These white people, they are white. To some extent, they used to say maybe they are from Europe. They came from the descendants of Europe and stuff like that. And then if you go back again to history, around 1901, the 1900s, and the later part of the 19th century, in 1800, when the Europeans also came to Buganda, to East Africa, the Kingdom of Uganda, they saw that the Buganda Kingdom had a very organized structure. It had a parliament, it had an army. The king had ministers. So the system was very organized, that it was almost like a governing structure, a government. So they said that these people, they are not Africans. Maybe they came from Europe, to be able to put up these things. So there has always been that, minimizing of Africans. So when they were taken to World War II, I said all that because I wanted to make a point here. When they were taken to World War II, They never thought that anything good would come out of them. And even when they were taken to schools and they went to receive education, people like Nkrumah, for example, they went to the United States to study. That time, it was still colonial times when Nkrumah went to the United States to study. So they never thought that Africans would be able to do anything, to them. But it's the same people who came back and started organizing. Those soldiers who went to fight World War II, for example, they came back to the Gold Coast. They are the ones who started the agitation in the Gold Coast before Ghana, got independence, before the momentum was built and Ghana got its independence. If you go back to 1945, even before Nkrumah came, the soldiers were already starting to agitate in the Gold Coast. And of course, we remember that in sub-Saharan Africa, Ghana was the first to get independence. But it was these soldiers who were catalyzing all that. And of course, even in the other African countries, these soldiers were able to build that. And so when we make connections, like what you said, in history, when we look at what is happening today, like they said, history always repeats itself. The behavior of people, because people behave in the same way. If you go and read even the Black Jacobins, a book which was written by C.L.R. James, he in that book, C.L.R. James says that the Europeans will continue to behave in the same way, and Africans will continue to take advantage, still will take advantage of the behavior of the Europeans. So what he was saying here is that history repeats itself. So what we are seeing today is the same pattern. The United States came to Africa, put up a lot of military bases, started training a lot of military people, soldiers, African armies, with the purpose that these people, they will be able to protect the interests of the African, the Americans, the American elite. The soldiers, the African soldiers, you will buy, now we will come, like the same tactics which was being used in Niger, buy the government, bribe the government, train the army, and the army will be controlled by the president to protect the Western interests, as we have seen. And of course, maintain a few troops, like we see in Ghana, there's military troops from the United States. In Kenya, there's military troops. In South Africa, there's military troops from the United States. So these ones, they will be there to maintain the training of the indigenous military. And then it will be able to maintain that flow of resources. Because the purpose of the United States being here with the military, units is to continue, and the whole West is continue the flow of resources. It's the same tactic which was being used colonialism, the same purpose is the same reason which they are here. What was being used during colonialism and slavery, the continual flow of resources from Africa. So that means you have to justify it in all kind of ways. Now, what some of our soldiers have realized is that these people are not special people. They cannot use us. They cannot use some of our leaders. And that comes also to answer the question of the person who was talking about that you cannot justify coups, you cannot justify the removal of a democratic government with the Western, anti-Western, sentiments. So that argument or that outlook assumes that, that tactics, are stationary. I'll give you an example. The United States right now and the imperialists, they have embedded themselves in the African Union, even though this was supposedly a Pan-African organization. You can see countries like imperialist Israel trying to force themselves into the African Union. So they integrate, even Obama came to the African Union to give a speech. A leader of the imperialist world came to give a speech at the African Union. Can you imagine that? So they have been able to integrate their imperialist, hegemony. Their hegemony, the imperialist hegemony, has been integrated in some way with the African interests and Pan-Africanism, so that they can be able to achieve the objective. So when you are talking about coups, it's like saying you are sitting on one side and saying coups are completely bad. And this, I've had this argument with a lot of Pan-Africanists, and I've tried to explain this, that coups are not inherently bad if you understand them. Of course, the coups were sort of invented by the French and the Americans and the Western world, but the Africans also can learn to use them to their advantage. In the same way, the Western world has embedded itself and is using Pan-Africanism to advance its interests. So that is the point I wanted to make. Now, that's what we are seeing right now, that it is possible that history is repeating itself. And of course, you spoke about the civil rights movement. When you look at the civil rights movement, it's the same. The civil rights movement started galvanizing starting the 1940s after some of the African Americans who fought, in World War II came back to the United States. They started questioning, how can the United States treat us like this? Because that was the period of the segregation. It was apartheid, actually, in the United States, that people of African descent, used to drink from different pots. They used to go to different toilets, and toilets were always labeled, this is for the whites, this is for the blacks. The hotels, the blacks had their own hotels. Even in the military, the blacks, went to different places, and the whites went to different places. They would not sit in the same place. This is a country which is running around the world. And I'm not talking about long time ago. I'm talking about 1950s. This is when these things were happening. And this is the country which is going around telling us about human rights and democracy. It's just despicable and arrogant and disgusting that the United States is going around talking about human rights. And having realized this as Africans, I think that narrative and those lies that you are advancing democracy, that the United States is the one which has the right to define what democracy is, I think that is what we are debunking even on this channel right here. So we are saying that no one has the right to define for us what democracy is. And we are redefining it. And when we are trying to redefine what democracy is for ourselves as Africans, I think no one has the right to tell us that you should define it in this way. And we will use any means, necessary, available to us until we define democracy for ourselves. And I think that is just the beginning, what we are seeing in Mali and Burkina Faso. And it could be history that is repeating itself.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining that, Kwame. Now, this is our last question for tonight. And thank you again. I really thank the viewers here who are engaging really sometimes I read and as I listen to you as well. Very impressive. Thank you very much. So if there's time, I'm going to read them out at the end. Now, the last question I want you really that I want you to shed light on is that can the African Union, ECOWAS, and the heads of state in Africa ever redeem their reputation? To be honest, it looks like this time they are on the wrong side, and the use, of course, who they themselves have been saying are the majority are on the opposite side. What is it that what can they do? Can they redeem their reputation, these heads of states, ECOWAS and the AU?
Yeah, I think that if AU, in brief, if AU is to redeem its reputation and show itself as is working for the African people, there's a lot of things it has to do right now. Because right now it looks like it is digging itself further in the grave whereby the African people will distrust it further and further, more and more, looking at its behavior. So it will need to do a lot of soul searching, the African Union itself, and of course with its organs, including the Pan-African Parliament, because we saw the Pan-African Parliament also issued a statement in condemnation of the coup in Niger. And of course, the African Union had pushed out Mali and had pushed out Burkina Faso from the membership of the African Union. So the African Union would need to do a lot of soul searching, and it will need to do a lot of work. The next, I say, African Union Commission chairperson will need to do a lot of soul searching, and he will need to do a lot of work to rehabilitate the image of the African Union, because it looks like for ECOWAS, that one I cannot say anything about it, because that one, it doesn't have any credit. It has not achieved any credible results. I'm not saying it has not achieved anything, but it has not achieved any credible results for ECOWAS. That is on the side of ECOWAS, which you can talk about that it has achieved this. When it wanted, you can talk of when it wanted to launch the ECO, which was supposed to be a currency that was supposed to serve West Africa. But immediately when France connived with their puppet in Ivory Coast, and they vetoed and they toppled the ECO, ECOWAS did not do anything. So it shows you that ECOWAS is just some loose group which is just there doing nothing, completely nothing, is out of touch with the reality, of what is happening on the ground, and some group of people who are confused and they don't know what to do, and they are out of touch with the African people generally. So the AU, when I go back to the AU, I think the African Union will need to do a lot of soul searching, and I think it should start with the new, if we elect, or if a new head or chairperson of African Union Commission comes into being, that is, maybe if he is a good African who analyzes issues and looks deeper in what is happening, then that person will be able to dig the African Union out of the hole in which it has dug itself right now. Because that is what I'm seeing, that it has dug itself deep in a hole that is very difficult to come out right now. First of all, the African Union has been saying that it is reforming itself as an organization to be able to serve the African people. And of course, that is what led to the program which was championed by Dr. Nkosazana Zuma, who was the African Union chairperson during that period, the Africa, Agenda 2063. So you would think that it was trying to reform itself, but now it is making even more mistakes. From my understanding, it is making more mistakes. The fact that it is not even sponsored and is not financed by Africans. These people have failed out of the African economy, which is $3.7 trillion. They have failed to mobilize Africa's resources to finance the organization. It shows you that these people are not serious, and they are being financed by the West. The same people who are inherent enemies of the African people, inherent enemies of the African continent. They are the ones who are financing the African Union. Then this becomes a problem that this organization has continued to dig itself. So this issuing of statements without assessing and analyzing what is on the ground, and not paying attention to the fact that in Niger, last year alone, you exported $4 billion of uranium alone, but Niger did not get anything of the $4 billion. The fact that it doesn't know that you have countries in Niger which are occupying the people and torturing the people and terrorizing the people. You have the United States in there with military bases. A sovereign country be occupied in this way. You have Canada, you have Belgium, you have France, you have Germany. All of them are in one country with their military. I mean, this becomes a very difficult hole to come out for the African Union, and a lot of work will have to be done. And that person to dig African Union out of that hole in which it has put itself, I think it has to do a lot of work. And that person must be really a Pan-Africanist, a serious Pan-Africanist who loves the African people, and someone who's not an elitist, someone who's not a careerist, who's not in that position just to pursue his interests, just to get his salary and go home, but someone who cares about really this continent. Because at this point, what we are seeing, the people at the African Union, the people in ECOWAS and these regional blocs, they really don't care about the interests of the African people, and they are out of touch with the African people and what is happening to them. They don't care about the continent in general. And that is why you see the continent is occupied, but they are concentrating on the reaction of the people who are being occupied and terrorized and oppressed and exploited.
Thank you very much, Kwame, indeed, for shedding light on that, your view. And thank you all for tuning in. Thank you. Some of you, even you have been reminding people to subscribe, like, and share it. Thank you again, Aaron, Black, and most of you here. You have been saying that you have shared it to your network. Thank you. Please continue to do that every time we have this live stream. And when there is a live stream is over, also please do that. Yeah, if I can, not everything really, they have been very, very active. I don't know, Kwame, if you have been able to see, they have been really active here in the chat section. Let me just, try to select randomly. Black says democracy means obeying the West and fulfilling their every economical and geopolitical needs. And Fred Bantu, welcome, Fred Bantu. It has been long since we have seen you here online. So he says, he or she, greetings, soldiers of fortune are all over Africa front lines for imperialism and colonizers. Aaron, yeah, he said this is what Eritrea has been at odds with the parasites for the last 30 years. Sheikh Arab says Mohammed bin Salma of Saudi Arabia saw that USA lost the NATO war on Syria and were humiliated in Afghanistan and are losing the war in Ukraine. I think he's repositioning himself and approaching China and Russia and even BRICS. Yeah, we have seen.
Yeah, we have seen. Yeah, Salman. I think. Sorry for coming in, interrupting you. We have seen that Salman has of course been making investments in China, and even they signed some contracts recently to invest in Pakistan about $10 billion. They want to build the oil refinery in Pakistan. So he has been trying to bring the people, some of them who were rivals in the past. Of course, we saw what Iran, China brokered that rehabilitation of relationship between Saudi Arabia and Iran. We saw that he invited Syria. So he's trying to bring the region together, some sort of, that is what Salman is doing, Mohammed bin Salman is doing in the Middle East, because all of them, they understand what time it is. They understand that the United States and Europeans now, they do not have any credibility, and they have been a source of chaos. The people who are supposed to be, a source of stability, they have become a source of chaos. And if they have done their part in the region, like helping Saudi Arabia to advance, then they think that they have done enough. That is enough. They can go now. We can do the thing ourselves. And that is what the rest of the world actually is realizing. And even in Africa is saying that it's enough what you have done. The justification of you saying that you are fighting terrorists, yet we are not seeing any results, and you have been here for 10 years, and you are the ones who brought these terrorists. ISIS did not start in Africa. ISIS started in the Middle East, and it is the United States actions in the Middle East which created ISIS. So if we have Africa and we have ISIS in Africa, then the person to blame for ISIS should be the United States, because it created the ISIS. Even Donald Trump said Obama is the one who created the ISIS. So we are not the first to say it. So the United States should be the one to blame itself. It should not be us to blame. So the African people are realizing all these connections and saying, wait a minute. These people are the ones who brought this chaos. They are the ones who overthrew the government in Libya. Before you overthrew the government in Libya, we did not have these terrorist groups in the Sahel, causing this much havoc and this chaos. So, and you are the same people who are saying that you are fighting terrorists. I mean, this is unacceptable. So we cannot accept it. So this is what the rest of the world is realizing, that we cannot continue to operate in this way. We cannot continue to operate with people who are liars and they don't have any integrity. And of course, you see people like the Chinese are saying that you have to be sincere in your approach if you want to come to talk to the Chinese. Be sincere. So what they are talking about, you have now to be truthful when you're talking about things. You cannot come to China with lies. So the rest of the world, that is what it has realized about the United States and the Europeans.
Yeah. So W said Kwame, he's talking about, I think he or she, the last question, the way you answered it. So W says, Kwame, you answered that with realism. I felt that response. And then W continues, democracy for the West means Africans have to accept poverty, slavery, and stealing of African resources. I mean, Fred Bantu said, great analysis, Kwame. So all that credit goes to you, Kwame. And the black at the end reminds us, and I really share his
People
message.
have to share the channel. They have to share what we are.
Share, and subscribe.
Yeah, the analysis. They have to share. Try and share the analysis if you like it and you feel that it should go viral. Do this because we are going to build this continent together by working together, and it starts now. Because all of us, if we are working together, we can do it. We have the ability of rebuilding this continent, and this is the time that history has given us for us to, to have that opportunity to remake, our continent into the image which we want it to be, and be able to develop it like how you have seen China building high-speed trains, building their own planes, building their own, electric cars. We can do that, but I think we have to start now, and we have to take back the continent from the imperialists first. If we don't do that, then we cannot start the reconstruction process of our continent. And of course, it starts now. That is the reason why we are here, to push our African narrative, to a certain level. So make that contribution, share the message, and let it go out there, because we have the capable people. We do not lack leaders in Africa. It is the system that is suppressing those good leaders, which we want them to come up and govern the continent. It always kills them. So contrary to what people have been saying, that the problem in Africa is leadership, the problem is the leadership system or the governance system. But the leaders are there in Africa. Do not let anyone lie to you that Africa doesn't have leaders. We have them, but they are being suppressed. They are not allowed to come up. Those who come up, they are killed. You saw Magufuli, you saw Nkrumah, you saw people like Robert Sobukwe, you saw, people like Patrice Lumumba. You have seen these leaders killed. You saw Thomas Sankara. So we do not lack the leaders. We have the leaders, but there is a neo-colonial system that is killing those leaders and is many times suppressing them and not allowing them to come to lead the continent. So we have to work together as Africans.
Yeah, indeed. So thank you. We invest here time, knowledge, and everything, and of course, above all, it's our passion to do it, and we feel also it's our duty to bring you this information to you. But if we just keep it in a small community, as which we are right now, it's not relevant. So we really need to reach out. So the only ways for you to share it. But of course, you have to subscribe and hit that notification bell so that whenever we schedule a live streaming, you get a notification. And give it a like. Also, it will help our algorithm. And if you further want to support us, also you can go to the description section and you can support us through our PayPal account. For tonight, that was it. We even planned to be here very few minutes, but as you can see, it went long. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you, Kwame. And that was it for us. Bye-bye.